and welcome. I was going to do an audio recording today, and then I thought, why not be adventurous? Let's try a video recording. So I'm going to read for you the full chronicle post 1. So haven't done this before, so you'll have to bear with me. Let's hope this works. Fingers crossed, everybody. Okay. So, Chevrefeuille Chronicles, Journal Entry 1. This is the full chronicle for paid subscribers of French Country Journal. Okay, so just to set the scene, the topic is a harvest fair, Lammas-tide fair in Fontelune-en-Berry, and it's giving you a glimpse of life in the fictional commune of Fontelune-en-Berry. This place doesn't exist, and none of these characters exist either. Events in the village are seen through the eyes of Ruth, a newcomer who has inherited a cottage, Maison de Chevrefeuille. My pronunciation of Chevrefeuille is never fantastic, but it's close. You could just call it Honeysuckle House from her Aunt Mildred. So here's the first extract. It's quirky. Hopefully it might make you smile sometimes and has no claim to being great literature. But I'm getting rather attached to this cast of characters that I've been getting to know over the summer who live in the hidden part of central France, not too far from where I live in Chassigneau. So here we are. The Chevrefeuille Chronicles, Lammas-tide, Harvest. In Fontelune-en-Berry. Ruth had expected a sleepy market square with the few jars of jam. Instead, the Place du Marché in Fontelune-en-Berry rang out with the sound of folk music. She drew closer, watching the band play. A fiddle, hurdy-gurdy, and what she thought might be a sort of bagpipe. It resembled the Northumberland pipes that she'd seen at home in England, rather than a Scottish bagpipe, which those of you who are aficionados of the bagpipe will know is much larger than the Northumberland pipe. This first Saturday of August had dawned hot, cicadas buzzing across the wheat and barley stubble in the fields. The combine harvester, organised by the local Farmers Association, had worked its way through the farms in the commune, and harvest had been safely gathered in ere the winter storms begin. Only the sunflowers and maize remained, as they would be harvested in September. It was still early morning, and the market square was crowded already. Baskets of green bean, des haricots, and onions, jars of honey, miel, glowing like amber, and a spiral of apple-scented wood smoke curling high above the tiled roofs. Today was special. It was the day when the ancient village bread oven was fired up by a contingent of retired bakers to celebrate the harvest, or Lammas-tide, as the locals called it. As Ruth moved closer to the smell of fresh bread baking in the oven, it made her mouth water. She closed her eyes, imagining the taste of warm bread with salt crystal encrusted butter provided for the festivities by a local producer. Odette approached her and handed her a small sprig of rosemary. It's harvest time, and we remember the good times of the year, the last year. Here you are, For fortune and remembrance, she told Ruth. Oh, yes, and for love. If the saints allow, she added with a knowing smile. Next year, you can help me make these buttonholes. It's important to become sewn into the fabric of a village. Your Aunt Mildred always assisted, so you must too. I'm afraid you'll have to imagine that I read that with a French accent. Ruth blushed, sniffing the rosemary and lavender in her buttonhole and pinning it to her dress with the safety pin provided. My French must be improving, thought Ruth. I think I understood most of that. The mayor, Monsieur Bellamy, emerged from the mairie looking dapper, wearing a suit, completed by his ceremonial sash. He called for silence as the first loaves emerged from the bakery, carried aloft by Monsieur Clement and cracked and crusty from the wood-fired oven. He raised one loaf high, naming it pain béni, and the crowd cheered. He tried to continue and give a small speech, but their children were already jumping up and down in excitement, and most of the citizens had wandered towards the long tables set up in the square. Marcel, the wandering goat, bleated loudly, following after the crowd in hope of a slice of fresh bread. Soon laughter rippled down the long tables as the loaves, butter, and goat's cheese crottin appeared in mismatched dishes. Tables almost groaned as more food arrived, trays of golden potato pancakes and potato pies, berrichon lentil salad, and assorted fruit flans with crème fraîche. Arguments broke out over whether chèvre or walnuts, chèvre being goat's cheese, should be eaten first. Compromise came as slices of cheese spread with honey, walnuts crushed on top, were made up. It was the same every year. The berrichon cuisine of goat's cheese, walnuts, and honey together, en ensemble. And then there was cider, wine, or elderflower cordial. Fontelune was far enough north for elderflower trees and far enough south for fig trees. Cider seemed to be the local choice, but Ruth knew that the mayor had been the force behind the development of the vineyard on a hill close to the village, and the first years had produced an unexpectedly acceptable, decent grey or rosé. Why did the locals call a rosé, a gris, or grey wine? This was something that she needed to research. She wandered around the square, tasting enthusiastically. At the cider press, she found herself next to Miles, who insisted he was called Nigel, but no one called him that. In England, bread is just bread, he said, half amused. Here, it's a performance. It's true theatre. And comfort food, Ruth added, breaking a slice still warm. Drafted into service, she asked. Apparently, he said, wiping sticky cider froth from his sleeve. Odette told me I needed to stitch myself into the village, and she claims that I have an affinity with cider. Ruth burst into laughter at his words. She told me the same, except I'm to help her with the buttonholes next year. They laughed together. I hope you'll still be here next summer, Miles said, handing her a glass of cider. Shall we go and find some of that bread before it's gone? He suggested. Around them walnuts cracked, goat's cheese dripped with honey, and folk music threaded through the air. For Ruth, it was a first taste of belonging in a new community. Monsieur Dubois, a retired baker, told scandalous tales of rescuing snails, only to fry them in garlic, Children chased each other between benches, clutching apple and apricot tart. Marcel the goat stole a tart. Odette scolded, and the fiddle and the hurdy-gurdy played even louder. As dusk fell, conversation softened into stories about autrefois, those long ago other times, still strong in this community's combined memory. Ruth sat back, rosemary sprigs still attached to her dress, watching the candles burning brightly in the dark. Fontelune-en-Berry's abundance, she realised, lay not only in fields and orchards, but in neighbours who shared freely, that sense of community. And she'd been welcomed and was now part of that circle. To complete, a few notes on folk music in the Berry. A folk band in the Berry often consists of a combination of a violin, we might call it a fiddle, the hurdy-gurdy, of course, and a type of bagpipe which seems to resemble the Northumberland pipes, and a piano accordion. The hurdy-gurdy and bagpipe often combine in the traditional music of the Berry. There are polkas, the polka du Maréchal, waltzes, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this word, but I'll give it a go. Schottisches. It sounds almost German pronunciation. Schottisches. Schottisch. Scottish, à la Maluche. Below, in the text, you'll find some links to videos. And I think in this case, a picture is worth 1,000 words when looking at these musical instruments. So here we are. First try at recording some of the fiction that has been put together over the summer. I'll say au revoir, à la prochaine.